Drew, do you remember the days when you said the iPad Pro was your favorite Apple product?
Yes, I do, Craig.
Those were good times, good times.
We're still in good times.
No. I don't know what you're talking about. You're a has-been. Now you've abandoned Apple and you're unable to be happy with yourself.
No, I would argue I'm more happy today with my current Apple products than I ever have been.
Wow. Who's to say, really?
I am. I know how happy I am.
Well, what is it then? Did you just buy the new latest generation iPhone 14 Pro Max?
No, I didn't buy anything new. Still, my favorite Apple product to this day is something I got over a year ago.
An old Apple product that you're happy with? I don't know what you're talking about.
That's right, Craig, because despite all of Apple's flaws, they did something so incredibly well that they had to can the disappointing second generation that was rumored to come out this year.
How lame is that?
Get out of here, Craig. We're talking about the 16-inch MacBook Pro. So I first took delivery in October 26th of last year, and boy, this has been one of those rare Apple products that just exceeded my expectations, and I've yet to see really anything on the market come close to beating this laptop. When I reviewed it last year, I titled the video "The Best Laptop Ever," and I know what I'm saying. Sure, there's some people that are always going to make the argument, well, it's not as good at gaming as other laptops. I'm willing to go as far as to say, though, that a laptop that prioritizes battery life, productivity, efficiency, and display dynamic range and refresh rate is a better overall product than one of those tank laptops with a 20-minute battery life that's very good at playing games. You know, if the job of the laptop is to be good at gaming, then there are laptops out there that can do that better, but I still think they're objectively worse designs because it's designed like a desktop that has a battery attached to it. The architecture is always compromising. It's trying to find a way to replicate what we already have on a desktop into a smaller, more thermally constrained product, whereas the ARM architecture, I felt like from the beginning, was built for mobile. It was built to be used on the go. It was built for efficiency and decent performance, but now what we're seeing being capable with the M1 Max chip that I've now tested and utilized for the past year is showcasing a laptop design that is very intentional. It's not compromising from the desktop experience. It's rethinking what a computing experience can be from the ground up. And GPU performance set aside, what is far more impressive to me about this MacBook Pro is everything that makes a laptop the laptop. 16-inch MacBook Pro has incredible and fantastic sound system. It has one of the best microphones I've ever heard on a personal computer. It has a fantastic webcam, although lately, thanks to the launch of macOS Ventura, I don't use the webcam pretty much ever anymore. I'm pretty much always falling back to using my iPhone as a camera, so if you're asking me, would I be the kind of guy comfortable with ditching the notch, ditching the webcam on my laptop in favor of just pulling out my iPhone anytime I want to use it? Yeah, I would be the weirdo comfortable with that. I'd be okay if they just scrapped the webcam entirely in a future generation MacBook Pro. I know that would not go over well. That would tick off a lot of you people, but now that I'm rarely using that webcam, that notch is starting to feel a lot less functional and quite pointless. But all that to say, the webcam on this thing is still great. It's 1080p, the color science is good, it's better than the iMac Pro webcam that I was using before, even though that was also 1080p. Just the exposure dynamic changing is not as good. The image signal processor does its job on the M1 chip very well, and the trackpad is large and easy to use. The battery life is longer than pretty much any other laptop I've seen on the market. I keep saying it's the best battery life in any laptop. No one has told me I'm wrong yet, so I'm gonna keep saying that until proven otherwise. But especially when you take this thing on a trip and are using it for general web browsing and media consumption, you know, the refresh rate dynamically changes depending on what you're doing, and you can go days on end just using it as a basic laptop and have great sound quality when you're watching movies or TV shows, great audio quality when FaceTiming, and the battery in this thing just takes forever to kill, unless, of course, you're being more productive with it and doing more intensive things like I do with my laptop, like live streaming or video editing, 4K at 60 ProRes color corrected footage. That kind of stuff will chew through the battery obviously a lot faster, as it would with any laptop. pop, but the thermals are excellently handled. The fans rarely ever get loud enough for you to actually hear it, even when doing intensive things. And I'm proud to say that this laptop has literally unlocked certain features that I couldn't do with previous Macs that I owned. Like now, for this tech channel, as I'm recording this, we are live streaming the filming and editing using the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I can capture my full desktop at 60 frames a second and be color correcting footage and editing it or exporting it all simultaneously, and the fans don't even really kick on very heavily. That has opened up a new use case for my business, for my channel, that I literally just couldn't do with the iMac Pro. I tried to with previous generation Macs as well, and I just couldn't get it to work. The screen capture performance or the video editing performance would just be significantly handicapped if you tried to do both simultaneously, whereas this laptop is capable of doing it. So all kinds of great things to report with this laptop, not to mention the fast charging as well you can take advantage of, but I don't. Just because the battery life is so insanely good, there's rarely any times that the battery is low and I need to charge it up quick. But occasionally on a trip or something, if I was using it in a place where I couldn't have power and then I needed to top it off real quick before we went on a big trip, that's when I might utilize the 140 watt included brick to fast charge it very quick. But it's also a great battery bank on trips as well. Even if you're not using it as a laptop, it's just, you know, a very large battery pack that you can plug in USB-C cables to and get pretty fast charge speeds to your other devices, to your accessories. In fact, every night now, my MagSafe Duo is powered from my 16-inch MacBook Pro. So basically, my laptop is able to charge my watch and my phone every single day, which is pretty incredible and helpful on trips. You don't have to pack around a separate battery bank when you've got this laptop already. Okay, so I've said like nonstop nice things about this MacBook Pro. What do I not like after a year of ownership? You guys don't want to hear all the same stuff. I'm wasting your time, aren't I? You want to know, well, what hasn't aged well? What could be improved? What would you like to see better in the future? And luckily, there are some things that I think could get much better with this MacBook Pro without having to buy new hardware. This could just be a software fix in the future, but I genuinely have been disappointed with optimized battery charging because, as you guys can probably tell, I want a laptop because occasionally we go on trips and occasionally I use my laptop on the go, especially now that I've been filming a bunch more videos inside my Tesla for the EV channel. I take my laptop out there every single time, so I need a mobile workstation, but a lot of the time I'm just filming and editing in here in the office and I don't need it to run on battery power, so I just leave it plugged in for extended periods of time. And I wish I could say optimized battery charging figured out my charge routine, but it really never did. And at first I tried to download programs like Al Dente and set a charge limit for my computer, but the app crashed a lot. It was buggy and it didn't really work. Like, it would charge past the charge limit and I would have to set it at a lower percentage to get it to discharge. Plus, whenever I installed an update, it would ignore Al Dente and charge it up to 100% anyway. So Al Dente is not a great solution, and I genuinely just think that Apple should build in a charge limiter to the MacBook and all of their Apple devices, really. If you're the type of person, especially like me, who may end up having the laptop docked and plugged in for days at a time, potentially, those kinds of people that still want a laptop and still want a battery so that occasionally they can take it on the go, but for weeks at a time it's going to be plugged in, we want to be able to set the battery percentage at a very precise number, whether that's 80% or 50% or my favorite 69%, and just have it stay there. Have it pull all of its power from the wall, not pull any power from the battery, because we'd rather preserve the longevity of it. A lot of us hold on to our MacBooks for 8, 9, 10 years because they age that well, but part of what affects the aging process is the battery health. And, you know, I was told by so many different people that don't worry about it, the battery's fine, just leave it plugged in all the time, leave optimized battery charging on, it won't hurt it, it's gonna be okay. But here's the one thing that's concerned me and annoyed me after a year of ownership. I listened to everybody and I just realized, you know what, I'm not really gonna care what happens. I'm just gonna leave it plugged in and trust that macOS knows how to handle the internal battery and it will just pull all of its power from the wall adapter, even though a lot of the time it just kept charging straight to 100% and it would leave the laptop at 100% for weeks at a time sometimes. I do think that's had an impact on the battery health, because now when I check the health and settings, I'm currently sitting at 93% after a year of ownership, which doesn't sound too bad because most batteries are rated for, you know, above 80% health after 2 years of ownership. So I'm on track to be above 80% after the 2-year mark, but this is not the same thing as like an iPhone or an Apple Watch battery health. This is a device that has been plugged in for probably the majority of its life. Occasionally, yes, it gets used on battery life, but the vast majority of the time, this should not be using the battery at all. The battery should just be sitting at a low state of charge in storage mode, with the laptop being powered through the power adapter that it's plugged in with. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened, and optimized battery charging would sometimes take months to kick in, where it would finally start saying source power adapter and let the battery sit at a lower state of charge, because in system information it says that I'm just over 50 cycles. So to lose 7% of your battery health with only 50 cycles on the battery, that's not normal to me. So I'm pretty much convinced that keeping the battery at a high state of charge, which is what macOS has done for the past year, has impacted the battery health. And I know it's not a deal breaker. Again, it's still my favorite Apple product, but it feels like a very simple software solution that could preserve the battery health for a lot longer and save me the $200 battery replacement fee that I might run into in the future. Plus, we know once the battery health dips below 80%, that can start to have an impact on performance potentially, and then the MacBook might start acting weird or not as fast as I'm used to it acting. And yeah, the battery tabs are pretty easy to access, and I could replace the battery myself, but the reason I buy Macs in the first place, and the reason I'm an Apple sheep, is because I don't like tinkering. I don't like taking things apart and working on them myself. I like Apple because it allows the technology to just work and kind of blend into the background, and you don't have to think about these types of things. But if my battery life is gonna get progressively worse because of macOS not knowing how to manage a battery that's being used in standby mode, then that's going to age the product a lot faster, and in my opinion, it makes no sense that my iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is older than my MacBook Pro, and my Apple Watch Series 7, which is also older than my MacBook Pro, and yet have smaller battery capacity, so you know they're supposed to degrade faster, and they're not used on the charger like the MacBook is, so these have way higher cycle counts than the MacBook does. These both still have higher percentage battery health than the MacBook Pro, despite the fact that their cycles are likely well over 400 at this point. So they have like 8 times as many cycles, and they're smaller, and yet their battery health is listed at a higher state than the MacBook Pro. That seems wrong to me, and I know Apple likes to think that optimized battery charging is going to do all the right things in the background, but in my experience, it doesn't get it, and it would be so much easier if, just like from my car, I can set a very basic, very simple charge limit. You just have a little status bar with a dot, and you can just drag the dot to a lower state and have the battery stay there. Then I think the battery health would not be as low as it is right now. And the only reason I bring this up is because I do intend on keeping my Macs for many, many years to come. Like, basically, I bought my iMac Pro in 2017, and I did not replace it until last year. So I got nearly 5 years of use out of the iMac Pro, and because of how much better the MacBook Pro is, I intend on getting 5, maybe 6 years of use out of this laptop. If I was just gonna buy a new laptop every year, then yeah, I wouldn't care about the battery health at all. But because I would like to own it for the long haul, seeing it drop 7% after 1 year makes me concerned and annoyed for the future, and annoyed with myself because everyone just said, Drew, don't worry about the battery percentage. It's not gonna be a big deal. Just leave it plugged in all the time. Apple knows what to do. So because I've seen the battery health drop so much in the past year, I have started using al dente again, even though it's buggy, even though it still doesn't work all that well, and the battery percentage doesn't exactly match where I want it to be, and whenever I update the computer, it charges past the al dente limit anyway. I don't think this should be a third-party solution. I think this should be baked into the app, especially when so many people use their MacBook Pros docked for extended periods, plugged into external monitors. If you're not going to give the charge limiter to the iPhone or the Apple Watch, at least give it to MacBooks, because of how often people use these things at their desks and just want to take it on the go on occasion, but not every day. That's definitely my biggest issue with the machine in terms of upgrades. Of course, there's all the obvious stuff. I would love it to get Wi-Fi 7 or Wi-Fi 6E in the future. It would have been great if it got HDMI 2.1 or the faster SD card slot standards that exist out there. They could have adopted that with this MacBook Pro, but maybe they were limited by the throughput that the M1 Max chip could handle. Obviously, I will welcome with open arms the 3nm chips in the future. M2 Pro, M2 Max chips will be much faster. But the one thing that I would like changed that I'm not gonna get, because I know I'm in the minority on this one, but I'm not a huge fan of MagSafe 3. Even if you scroll back and watch my old tech videos, when they got rid of MagSafe on the 2016 MacBook Pros, I didn't really care. I was happy to have 4 Thunderbolt ports that you could charge from any one you wanted, either side, and I like being able to charge from either side, especially on vacation vacations and when I'm on trips and stuff, sometimes you don't have good control over where you're going to be plugging in. And I like that the cable it came with is braided, that's good, but the fact that it's MagSafe means that I have to go back to always charging it on the left. And I have other USB-C cables, of course, but because most of my USB-C cables came from either like iPad purchases or, you know, old phone chargers from Android phones I reviewed and stuff, none of my old USB-C cables were very long. They were all like 1 meter and none of them were braided. So thankfully my friend Mike had an old USB-C cable he wasn't using that is 2 meters and braided, so I've started using that again because I also was not a fan of the charge light. You know, I happen to sleep in the same room that my MacBook is charging, and that charge light always being either orange or green, reminding you that the battery is at 100%, and that's not what batteries want to be stored at for extended periods. That light being on all the time was annoying, so we taped it over at first, but now I don't have a charge light to worry about. To me, the charge sound is fine. I don't really run into that circumstance where I'm like plugging in a cable and I want to know if the battery is below 100% or not as I'm plugging it in. Like, I can see it on the display, but that's probably because a lot of the time my MacBook is at my desk and I don't necessarily close it every time. It's open because it's exporting or uploading something, and, you know, at the end of the day, I can see what the battery percentage is, and it makes a sound when I plug it in anyway. I don't need the extra charge light. I know most people love MagSafe, and I'm very alone in this sector. It's a nitpicky thing. It's not a huge deal because, thankfully, I can still charge the laptop from both the left or the right side, and I would much rather have a USB-C cable with me on trips. All I'm saying is, if we had the option, and if it didn't cost anything extra, would I rather have 4 Thunderbolt ports, or would I rather have 3 Thunderbolt ports with 1 MagSafe? Yeah, I would still take the 4 Thunderbolt ports, and let's say they had to include MagSafe on this MacBook Pro to please people. If at checkout they were like, would you like a MagSafe 3 braided cable for your laptop, or would you like a 2-meter braided USB-C cable to come with this laptop? I would have chose the USB-C cable. That would have made it easier on trips and stuff to be like, okay, I can charge my laptop with this cable, or I can charge my iPad with this cable, or, you know, the new USB-C Siri remote. And it sounds like that's the direction Apple is going, USB-C, all the things. So the fact that the high wattage brick that comes with this MacBook Pro that could be, you know, the last brick you need in the future when iPhones and MagSafe Duo and everything starts going Type-C, that becomes a little bit harder now because the MacBook Pro is shipping with MagSafe 3. So now you have this one cable that is only good at charging one machine, and I would rather it come with a cable that can charge many things, because I think probably AirPods and iPhones and lots of other devices will go Type-C in the future. So just one little nitpicky thing, but again, not the end of the world. I can just not use it. I've also like never used the HDMI port on this MacBook in the last year. Just not a lot of situations, because if I do need to show something on our TV, I just use AirPlay. I don't typically plug in directly with HDMI. I'm glad it's there as an option. It's not hurting anything by being there, but the SD card slot I definitely used a lot more frequently, but because these videos started filling up so much space on my SD cards, I've now switched to recording to external SSDs that I just plug in via USB-C on the side, so SD card slot actually not getting any use for me anymore, but again, not hurting anything, and I'm sure very much appreciated by photographers and videographers out there alike. And the fact that Apple had a glitch when I ordered this MacBook and gave me 6% cash back instead of 3% makes me love this machine even more, and it once again makes me feel better that I got the 8 terabytes of storage, because I do record a crap ton of videos, and I store a lot of B-roll on my computer to use as cutaway shots for my videos, so I have used over 4 terabytes in the past year. There's definitely some stuff I could clean up and get rid of, but to me, it's a matter of time when you're gonna fill up drives because of how much video stuff I'm recording, and I knew that buying 8 terabytes was a lot, but it was gonna buy me a lot of time in the future because I wasn't gonna have to offload footage or sort through footage, figure out what I need to keep and what I need to get rid of. So I feel very comfortable that I don't have to worry or think about filling up storage. I literally just dump as much crap as I want to on this laptop, and it's incredibly difficult to fill up. And I can take all of that local B-roll and all of that footage with me on the go. When I go on trips, on vacations, I don't have to pack around separate hard drives or separate SSDs because everything is just stored right on the laptop. And I'll typically record my videos on vacations and trips and stuff off of my iPhone. So footage just goes from the iPhone to the laptop, and it's still a very lightweight machine in my opinion. I know that relative to other MacBooks, this one's pretty heavy, but in my view, it's very easy to just throw in a bag or carry it to the living room or carry it to the kitchen and watch TV on there, or show my wife or family members like what I've been working on for today's videos. It's not that big. It's not not that bulky, especially compared to the gaming laptops people are saying. This is better than a MacBook because it can run Fortnite at a slightly higher FPS. Yeah, congratulations on your chonk, boy. I will take the best laptop ever made, the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is just so insanely good. Apple realized they couldn't release a half-baked M2 upgrade this year. They had to push that off into next year to wait for the 3nm architecture, which should have some pretty noticeable efficiency and performance improvements, but my guess is the design is still going to remain mostly the same. It's just so dang good. You can fit a huge battery in this thing, have great thermal architecture, great speakers, great display, that buttery 120 hertz. I've still yet to find an external monitor after a year of use that can match the specifications of my MacBook Pro. Resolution is high, mini LED, allows for great color accuracy and very deep blacks, and like nothing else can touch it. It's just so insanely ahead of its time. That's why I want to own it for the long haul, and I'm very happy with the first year of ownership. Again, aside from the charge limit thing, that's kind of annoying. Increases the likelihood that in the future I'll have to pay the $200 to replace the battery, which I feel like I wouldn't have to do if there was a charge limiter, but maybe we'll get that in a future generation of macOS. We'll see. But how are your guys' MacBook Pros aging? Are you happy with them? Are you not happy with them? I still absolutely would recommend it to anybody now, especially because of how much you can get them for certified refurbished, or if you could get them through Amazon, you can find them discounted at Best Buy and stuff. They're so insanely fast machines, and now you can get them even cheaper than they were a year ago. So 10 out of 10 Apple product, would recommend again. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I'll see you all in the next one.